Aloha and welcome to Maunalua Past, Present, and Future. My name is Luka Zavas and I work for Livable Hawaii Kai Hui, and today we'll be talking about the wai and kai, or the freshwater and saltwater of Maunalua. Today we have our special guest, Kahoaliʻi, and he will be talking about the research that his lab does. If you don't mind introducing yourself a little bit to our guests.
Can do. Aloha mai kākou, mai kahi pai, wa o Kahoaliʻi kakali Keahi, no kalawihine, wai manalo, a Maunalua mai au. I'm Kahoaliʻi kakali Keahi. I am from Kalawihine, born and raised, and I also spend a lot of my time in Waimanalo, Wakapu'u, Sandies, and I now reside in Maunalua. I currently work at Chaminade University as the Director of Environmental Studies. However, I'm also the culture specialist there as well. And most of my background comes from chemical oceanography, ecology, the study of limu, as well as Hawaiian studies and language.
Awesome, wow, you do a lot. Thank you so much for joining us today. So we first had you come to Livable Hawaii Kai Hui back in 2020 to do some water quality research for our restoration project at Keahi-Wood wetland, which is a small remnant wetland of what used to be of Maunalua Bay. But before we jump into that, I kind of want to know, what else does your lab do other than the water quality testing for Keahi-Wood?
So our lab, or my lab, got started roughly about a year before 2019, so 2018-ish. And the reason why I started my lab was because I recently visited Kahoaliʻi. Kahoaliʻi is a beach that my family used to frequent when I was younger, and I noticed lots of erosion happening. So what I wanted to do, now that I had the resources as an educator in higher education, was train my students in a lab to do field work. And it all started with looking at limu. So what I wanted to do with my students is build the skills necessary for them to work on in the field, either as a researcher or as an ocean manager, either in Department of Land and Natural Resources or with Department of Aquatic Resources, and just create a data library both for the community and for our university. And then from there, it's kind of built into kind of this water quality lab we have today, where our goal is to teach the community how to do these water quality tests if and when they want to go for grants for restoration like Keahi-Wood, while also teaching our students both within our community and within our classrooms proper lab etiquette, so that when we do these things, it's quality work and it's something that can be used by everyone.
That's amazing. So you're kind of putting the science into the hands of the community.
Yes.
Instead of us having to spend tons of money to get outside resources to come and help us.
Exactly.
And I know you had a couple photos of your students out in the field to talk about your, so this is your lab students identifying limu?
Yes. So this happened this summer. I hosted a handful of high school students from around Oahu, actually, who wanted to get into the field of oceanography or marine science. So this is them coming back from the beach after identifying several species of limu, and then having to actually identify them under the microscope based on characteristics and a list of identifying factors that I gave to them previously that day.
Oh wow, that's really cool and amazing, because I identify birds, and that's a lot easier, I think, than identifying limu. And then we have some photos, I think, of some of your students out at Keahi-Wood, getting into the waders and doing some wetland research. I know you're going to get into it a little bit, but what is that long dangly thing that your student is holding?
So that is an instrument that we use to test basic water quality. There are several, I guess, different varieties out there, but we use the In Situ AquaProbe 400. There are 4 probes attached to it that test for temperature, salinity, pH, as well as dissolved oxygen and depth. I
see. That's really cool. And then I think the final photo that you have for us is your students out at Kahoaliʻi.
Yes. So this is part of our community day, where we try to invite the community as well as a handful of students on campus who need community service work or just want to get into the water and give back to the community. The goal with this project is to remove as much invasive limu as possible, while also learning about our native species and just giving back to the community in general. So we try to have this about once a month, and this year, now the semester has started, we're going to try and shoot for the last Sunday of every month starting in September.
I see. I know it as Kahoaliʻi, but is there other names that people might know this space as?
Yeah, so besides Kahoaliʻi, it's also known as Cromwell's.
I see. And even though it's so far at at the edge of Leahi, which is also known as Diamond Head, it's still part of Maunalua Bay, which I think a lot of people sometimes kind of get confused. Like we have the Ahupua'a of Maunalua, but the Bay of Maunalua actually goes from Avavamalu or Sandys all the way around. No, not Avavamalu, from Hanauma all the way around to Leahi, yes?
Correct.
Awesome. So kind of now zoning in on Keawawa wetland and the work that you've done for us, we contracted you to do pre and post restoration quality, not restoration quality, water quality of our site for our restoration. We were about to go into a large restoration project where we were moving a lot of bulrush, creating waterways, and so we wanted to see what effect our restoration had on the water that is so important for everything that lives in it, and especially the ʻalai ula that were our target species, to keep them, there and making sure that what we're doing isn't going to harm them in any way. And so when I think of water quality, I'm not entirely I'm not a water scientist, so what goes into studying it, and what factors do you look at for, and what did your lab do when they came out to our wetland site?
Actually, a great question. So that's something that we want our community members to know as well, whether it's in Hawaii Kai or in Kaimuki, Waikiki area where Chaminade is, or just anywhere in general in Hawaii. When it comes to water quality, you don't need probes to tell you kind of what's going on. However, it does help when you're ensuring that when you're restoring a certain area that it doesn't peak or get past a particular range, especially when we're talking about public health.
I see.
So basic water quality deals with temperature, salinity, which is temperature, which is how hot or cold the water is, salinity, how much salt is present or not present within the water. We also have pH, either how basic or how acidic the water is. And we also test for chlorophyll, how much algae is growing in the water, as well as depth, basically how deep the water is. And when we first started, we looked at nitrogen, so nitrate, nitrate, and ammonia. Basically, how much organic matter is going in and coming out of the water areas that we're testing in general, and how it's interacting with the entire ecosystem, both during heavy rains and during dry seasons.
I see. And so you use that probe, you called it.
Yes.
And so your students and you went out into the water and the mud at the marsh. And I think we have some really good photos of your kids going out into the water. And so, but first, this is Keawawa Wetland. It's right next to Oahu Club, located at 6888 Hawaii Kai Drive. It is a remnant of a larger fish pond, Ōlelo Maunalua, that was one of the largest fish ponds here on Oahu. And this is all that is left. And this is your study site, yes?
Yes. Yeah, so the cool thing about this site was one that it used to be a fish pond. It held fish, it grew things, but now it's kind of cut off from the main river mouth and it's unable to flush out now. So it is kind of the perfect site to train students in water quality testing. As you can see here, when people think of field work, they're like, oh, we're going to the mountains, we're going to the beach. They're going to the lo'i, but they forget that a fish pond or even a marshland is an option too. So having them gain experience into getting into the waders, wading into the mud is super awesome. Especially, I think it was our first week there, after getting to know some of the history about the site. One of our students found where we believe there is a freshwater spring that comes up within the fish or within the marshland itself. And the way she found it was she fell into it about shoulder height and couldn't reach the bottom. So one of our battery packs actually, even though it's supposed to help test water, it's not waterproof. So one of her first priorities before kind of falling in was to throw it to the side. And then the rest of us went in there to go and grab her. And actually, it's really interesting, which we'll probably see later on. It's one of the sites that have really low salinity and shows high levels of fresh water coming out of it.
I see. So maybe it's the next photo. If you, is that the area?
That's one of the areas.
One of the areas.
Yeah, so it's right before this one, which is why for about a year or two, we chose to use kayaks in that area specifically.
I see. So it looks not very deep. And
No.
when you look at the depth, it's kind of, what is it called?
It's pretty
it looks
shallow.
really shallow.
Yeah.
And then there's spots where it just like
Yes.
bottoms out. All
Yeah,
right.
so on average, it's about 4, maybe 5 feet deep in the deepest areas. And then if you're really lucky, you'll find the ones that are at least 8 to 10 feet.
Oh, so we are a spring fed. Like you said, we're not connected to any river mouths or things like that. So
That's what we believe. Moving forward with future things, which I'm sure we'll discuss later, we want to take a few more samples and tests later on to kind of prove our hypotheses.
I see. Oh, and coming out of the rush.
Yes.
So was there any like fun memories from the before or after of your students of being like, that is not what I signed up for?
Yes. One of my first interns, when she joined us actually, she expected, we're just going to put the probe into the water and, carry on. Not really thinking that, or realizing that, no, we're going to step into the mud. So, of course, she had just done her nails the day before.
Oh, no.
And I think 3 of them came off that day.
Oh,
Yeah.
but it looks like you guys are now well prepared. You have your
Yes.
waders and you're able to get in and out without too much mud.
Yes.
And so I think the next bit we have is a little bit of, you recently published, you gave us a report of
Yes.
like the pre and post comparisons. And so just wanted to go a little bit and highlight what you guys found.
Yeah, so this right here is actually a snippet of what the state's regulations are for the EPA and both the state of Hawaii for water regulations and rules. And it shows that during the wet season and the dry season, there's 2 different levels that we have to abide by when we're looking at water quality, especially when it pertains to public health. So for those of you who may be interested in knowing what those are, that's what I have on the screen here.
And so this is things to be able to let people know that we can get in the water, that it's safe to be in the water, and that, it's safe not only for us, but our volunteers and things like that.
Yes. Yeah, so if it falls outside of that range, then we'll probably have to reconsider, maybe let the water settle for a little bit, and then we can resume our work there.
Awesome. Thank you. And so we have some graphs, and if you don't mind just breaking it down for me to really understand, what are we looking at?
So right here we're looking at basic temperature. So what I did was I split up the wetland into 2 different sections. On the bottom side, we have the Oahu Country Club, which is right where the tennis courts begin and then right where their parking lot ends. Yeah. And then the top graph, we have all of the Havea Heiau side. So more your guys' side.
Yes.
Yeah. And what I wanted to show was the difference between the areas where Bulrush now has more channels and where you guys have been restoring things, as opposed to the other side where not as much restoration has been happening, but there is a lot more open water.
Yes.
And since we've been working from towards the ending part of 2021 into 2022, those 2 years, because we just got started, we highlighted mainly October to December for those 2 years. Getting to know the site, and of course, COVID kind of happened in that area, so we're getting right back on our feet. And then towards 2022, we've been doing regimens of every other week moving forward until current day. And what we see with all this rise and falls actually is large rain events for temperature. Obviously, when we have more fresh water coming in, we have higher spikes in cold water.
I see.
And then we have our hotter summer seasons before it drops back down again into our winter months.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. And then our next slide, we have our pH. And looking at this, does this look normal for how bumpy it is?
Yes. So for a closed system like this, it's fairly normal. because there isn't a lot of flushing going on within the fish pond or the marsh itself, there isn't a lot of water movement happening. It's kind of stagnant. But we can see as we move a little bit towards 2023, when more bulrush is removed and when we had our larger rain events, lots of water got moved out as well as heavier material. So we got a little bit of a dip in our pH before it rose back up to kind of acceptable levels again. And then just as a reminder, 7 is neutral, so that's your fresh water. Anything above that is kind of basic, and that's what we typically see when we have more salt water, so 8 and 8.5, and anything lower than that, it's a little bit acidic. But right at that 7.57 is perfect and where the wetland should be.
I see. So looking at that, I can tell different points that like they're higher. That means that there's more salt water in those spaces.
Yes.
And so thinking about what plants to put there, maybe not something that is like salt intolerant or things like that.
Exactly.
And then in the more lower sides, that's where more of my freshwater plants can go into.
And which is why we also had compared this. I think on one of the slides, we also have salinity levels as well.
Yeah, I think that might be one of our next slides. Oh, sorry, turbidity first.
Yeah, all good. So turbidity actually looks at how clear or how murky the water is. Typically, when you have low wind, there's less mixing of the water, so everything is calm and clear, and you can kind of see the bottom. And this also tells us how much maybe critters are in the water as well.
I see.
Yep. And with a closed system, again, like the Keahi-Wood marshland, this is very important too, because if we have high levels of turbidity or high levels of particulates in the water, that can also affect the public health ratings going forward. So when doing restoration, both inland or at sea, this is something that everyone needs to be aware of. Like that saying, brown water advisories, right? Whenever it rains, don't go in the water. The same kind of deal. It gives us a sneak peek into what may be going on or what may be growing microscopically in the water.
I see. Awesome. And then for, I think one of our final ones is, our depth that we were talking about. It doesn't look very deep.
It doesn't, but you can see there's some spikes in there. And actually, one thing I forgot to mention is if you look at the graphs, there's going to be blue bar lines.
Yes.
Those indicate rain events during those seasons or heavy rain events. And every spike that we see so far kind of correlates with a spike in rainfall during that season. So we see that high rise and fall of the depth of pH, of turbidity as well, as you progress forward throughout the year.
Oh, wow. And then here we are, the final one, the salinity.
Yes. So the salinity, again, this looks at the amount of salt that's within the water. And one thing we did was there's multiple sites all throughout Keahi-Wood, from the country club side all the way to the Hawaii side. But we wanted to focus on a handful of particular ones that showed interest to us, especially, with that spike right at the center, at the bottom, at the country club side, which we also saw at that same month for the Hawaii side. Mm-hmm. And we believe that during those heavy rain events, there is a lot more salt coming in from the harbor side that's leaching into the groundwater and getting into the wetland. Yeah. And we can see that actually here. And after doing this for about 4 years, one thing we want to start adding to our regimen is actually looking at radon. So radon is a molecule that can be detected through freshwater upwelling or through freshwater springs that tells us where that water came from. And if there's high concentrations of radon, it tells us that most of that water came from underground or from aquifers.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And so would that be able to tell us like exactly the points of the springs in our wetland, or more that we are getting water from the springs a lot during rain?
Yes, it'll help us pinpoint where those springs are, which is where the spikes are kind of in these areas,
I see.
And how far they spread out.
Oh, that's amazing. And yeah, even though we're not technically like connected to the marina anymore, we do have a little underground channel.
Yes.
And so I can see that the Oahu Club side seems
It's a fair bit more.
It gets a lot more salinity than
Yeah.
the other side. And I wonder if that's the reason why the bulrush is not growing in that middle pond area.
It could be too, which is why we want to start incorporating more chlorophyll data, especially where that red line is. We call that Site 31. That's where that concrete block is,
Yes.
where that channel is. There's also a large monkey pod tree that overhangs on that area as well. So it may also be well shaded. So they just don't grow in that area as well.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then do we have another slide? Awesome. So thank you so much for showing that. And that's really helpful in helping us to understand, you know, where should we be building our channels next as we move on to this next space. And, you know, like I was saying, where we should and should not be planting plants and
Yes.
things like that, so that we don't put an effort that isn't going to be fruitful in the end. And thank you so much for like also talking about, you know, ideas for the next steps for like chlorophyll and the
Yeah.
radon, so that we can, you know, not only make better decisions, but get to understand what's going on in the water and how that's affecting the plants and then the birds and also. As we kind of close out for the time, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the work that you are doing at Kahoaliʻi, and, you know, have some space for you to talk about your other passions and the limu that's over there.
Yeah, oh, thank you. So again, my background comes from lemur phycology, and one of my current passions is trying to restore the native ecosystem at Kahoaliʻi, since that is one of my biases. That's where my family used to be, used to go and ŌleloNet, fish, pick limu. And one thing I've noticed throughout the years is we've gotten more and more invasive species encroaching in this area. One of them is Acanthophora specifera, which is what we focus on specifically along the coastline. So again, we try to have community work days at least once a month at the last Sunday of every month, starting in September. And we focus on removing that one species in general. Before we go, however, into the water, I try to educate the students or community with what I know about the area, both historically, geologically, scientifically, and then also show them native limu within the area that may or may not be present anymore, and some that are still good to eat, but ones that we should leave and maybe keep a little bit secret, so that when we do need them, it will be available.
I see. Can we, and so you take samples back to the lab?
Yes. So not only do we harvest all of that limu, but we also take it back to campus. We rinse them, try to get as much salt out of them as possible, and then we use them for our garden. And while all of our volunteers are doing that, my lab actually goes back to, my students go back to the lab and try to identify as much limu as possible, while also gauging the health of our ecosystem. The way we do that is, one, we look at it under the microscope to see if there's any epiphytes or growths that are on our limu, or if there's any microscopic organisms, like maybe baby shrimp or larvae, or for particular seasons, like in October, we get a lot of sea slugs or sea snails that spawn. So there's just all this slimy netting everywhere. Lots of people think it's super gross, but we think it's super cool because it's part of the ecosystem, and it's something that we can actually kilo or keep track of now that we've been there for a handful of years.
So I had a quick question.
Yes.
Going back to the fact that Keahi-Wood used to be on the edge of a local ia. I know local ia, even though everybody thinks fish pond, it's actually to grow limu, to grow seaweed for the fish to eat. Is there any possibility that we would be able to reintroduce some of the native limu that might have been in Maunalua at Keahi-Wood?
I think it's a possibility. The only downside is limu like to have a lot of moving water. So it's almost like kalo, where when you plant kalo, especially in a wetland area, it likes to have lots of moving water because they like to be at a particular temperature.
I see.
But I don't see why we can't try. I'm sure there's a variety out there that we can bring back that is possibly edible too, and good for the alaiʻula or the aiʻo or any other water birds or flora and fauna in the area.
Because I know the alai ke'o that we have a couple times, they love to dive under the water to be able to eat limu. So I was just like looking at your limu and the restoration you're doing over there. I was like, oh, can I bring some back? But as we are closing out our time, I just wanted to say thank you so much again for coming. And then for any like interested community members or future students and things like that who are interested in water quality, getting into and understanding like what's happening under the surface, is your lab open? Is it recruiting new folks, or how do they get involved with you?
Typically. I wouldn't mind having volunteers come down, check it out during our community work days on the last Sunday of the month. But if there's any prospective students who may be thinking about going to college, not necessarily Chaminade, I'd be more than welcome to have you guys come down for a day or two to work in our lab, gain some experience, see if this is really for you before you make that important step into higher education. So that you have a better idea of what's actually needed, or maybe what you want moving forward.
Well, that's awesome. So anybody can come and get their hands a little dirty and doing both water quality at Keahi-Wood wetland or get into the ocean at Kahoaliʻi. Oh, thank you again so much. I've learned so much. I hope our community has learned so much more about what's going on. And I look forward to like maybe in another couple of years coming back and like having another update about what your lab is doing and more about, how the ongoing restoration at Keahi-Wood is benefiting everything. Yeah. And so for those, you can go to chaminadeuniversity.org or edu. .edu to learn more about how to apply and to be able to connect with Kahoaliʻi and his lab. And then you can also, if you want to come to Keahi-Wood wetland and see all the wonderful restoration work that we are doing there, you can go to www.lhkh.org and get to see not only our restoration sites at Keahi-Wood wetland, but also a lot of the work that we are doing around Maunalua. As we know, from the tops of the mountains down to the sea, everything is connected. So the little work that we do at our little remnant wetland hopefully is connected all the way out to Kahoaliʻi, right next to Leahi.
And every little bit helps.
Yeah, so thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.